It's 10:30 on June 16, 2025, and I'll call this meeting to order. Deborah, could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Hurt,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Hamaji,
Here.
Hildreth.
Here.
Everyone's here.
Are there any changes or requests for changes for the minutes of the meeting on May 1?
No.
Then we will adopt them as they are. Next item we need to do is the election of a vice chair. Do I have a nomination for someone to be vice chair for the policy committee?
I nominate Susan. Okay, I'll accept.
I'll second.
Can we have a vote?
Absolutely. You guys are on top of things here. Hurt,
Here, yes.
Still.
still here.
See, that's the way I think.
Bentley,
Here. Yes. Sorry.
I need a yes or a no. Hamaji,
Yes.
Hildreth.
Yes.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Susan. Thank you for doing that.
Welcome.
The chair does not have a report at this time. There's no unfinished business. There is new business. Deborah, can you take us through the charter and basic parliamentary overview, please?
Absolutely. Let me get on top of that. Oh, did you want to do the
Sorry, I
member?
forgot
Okay.
that. There is, I forgot the member forum. Sorry.
Okay, let's start the member forum. So we have 4 speakers today. One I am reading on behalf of somebody else who's submitted an email beforehand. Members are welcome to speak during the designated member forum at the Rossmore Walnut Creek Board and Committee meetings, either in person or over Zoom. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes and must clearly state their name and Rossmore address before beginning. And speaking on behalf of another member, a signed consent form is required. All of these forms can be found here by my office or online. And please be advised that the meetings are broadcast and recorded. By attending and participating, including during the open forum, attendees agree to the release RWC from liability for their voice and/or likeness being recorded and broadcast for any lawful purpose without compensation. And to begin the member forum, I am reading for Polly Thomas at 2633 Pine Knoll Drive, number 8. Let me get the timer going here. At their June 16, 2025 meeting, the policy committee will take up the question of whether to recommend that only members be allowed to submit letters to the residents forum and the Rossmore News. I am in total disagreement with restricting those who are not member owners from sharing their views in the residents forum of the paper. This is a totally different issue from the policy passed to conform with the state open meetings law restricting attendance and speaking at RWC meetings for members only. The first being a legal requirement we need to follow. The second being a restriction on participation in the Rossmore community just because a resident does not own their manor. Tenants are neighbors and friends at a time when many are seeking more transparency and inclusion. I see no valid reason to unnecessarily restrict the participation of any resident in the life of our community just because they are not owners/members. Let's stop that. And then next we have William Balin. Balin.
Hi, I'm William Balin. I reside at 3100 Tice Creek Drive, number 4. And I'm here to propose that the policy committee and the board adopt policies to protect and advocate for Rossmore residents who may lose or suffer reduction or delay in receiving Social Security or Medicare or other government benefits due to policies adopted or proposed by the current federal administration and not due to any fault of their own. There are residents I know who may primarily rely or solely rely on these benefits to pay their coupons. Last month, my wife and I suffered an unexplained delay in receipt of our benefits. These are earned benefits, and I am talking about loss or delay of these benefits not caused by any action of the resident beneficiaries. Some steps that this committee could recommend and that the board could adopt include: 1, a waiver of interest or penalties for late coupon payments due to the loss or interruption of receipt of these benefits. 2, an offer of grace periods or a delay in impositions of such interest or penalties. 3, establishment of a community fund to supplement lost benefits, especially if the resident beneficiaries are contesting the loss of these benefits. 4, intervention or advocacy on behalf of Rossmore benefits by the board with state and federal elected and appointed officials to try to change or correct the policies that are affecting receipt of these benefits. 5, efforts to join with other similar communities to lobby for protection of benefits. There are many of similar communities like Rossmore that are probably in the same position.
That is time.
Thank you.
Did you have any other numbers?
Do I have any other?
Did you have any other numbers to go through, or is that completing your thought?
Actually, you interrupted me at my last number. So
Chair, would you like
I would like to hear that last number, please.
Sure. Number 5 was to make efforts to join with other similar communities like Rossmore to lobby for protection of our benefits. These things are either being adopted or being proposed as we sit here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Graham Bell. If you wouldn't mind coming up here, please.
Morning, everybody. Graham Bell, 3441 Golden Lane, number 2, Walnut Creek, here in Rossmore. Been here for about 4 years. And myself and several other owners of EVs very concerned that we can't get access to the chargers. There are chargers outside. There are chargers in the gym, outside the gym, and there's chargers outside the event center. I'd like to know why it is that just any old car can use those spaces when it was obviously set up for to give us EV owners access. Seems to me common sense that we should have access 24 hours a day. That's my case.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Mary England. If you wouldn't mind coming to the table.
Good morning, I'm Mary England, 1200 Fairlawn Court, number 8. And I'm here in support of a proposal to rename Residents Forum to Members Forum. I do think that the GRF Board and GRF Policy Committee has a duty, fiduciary and governance duty, to attend to members and to give priority to member interests. Part of why I say that is that in the trust agreement, the language of the trust agreement states that GRF, as it was named, operates property to be held for use of benefits of the mutuals and their members. And that is restated in recital C2, 3, 4, 5, recital D, section 5 and section 7. So I think the original framers here had membership in mind, and I support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the member forum.
Thank you. Okay, now, Deborah, can you take us through the charter and basic parliamentary overview?
Absolutely. All right, we're going to review the policy committee charter. So the purpose and responsibilities of the policy committee are to act as advisory capacity to the Rossmore Walnut Creek Board of Directors. It provides guidance on RWC's bylaws, policies, rules, and charters of all standing and board committees. The committee will review governing documents as needed to identify areas requiring updates, ensure consistency and clarity of documents prior to board consideration, consider additional matters referred by the board or for appropriate review, and publish agendas, keep minutes, and make periodic reports to the board. So the importance of following the charter for meetings is really, it serves as a functional document outlining the committee's purpose, its scope, authority, and procedures. Would you like some water? There's some water right over here in the fridge. And to follow these charters, it really is compliance with legal standards such as the Brown Act that ensures transparency and public involvement in meetings and local legislative bodies. Corporations Code specifies rules regarding the governance of advisory committees. And benefits of adhering to this charter is maintaining consistency and compliance, that all the committee activities align with the established regulations, and its purpose promotes transparency and accountability, facilitates orderly and efficient meetings, and enhances the stakeholder trust and participation. So following this charter really helps maintain consistency and adherence to legal standards, ensuring this committee operates within its defined scope and authority. Any questions on this? Okay. Next up, we have so the basics of parliamentarian procedure and the importance of publishing committee agendas and adhering to agenda item requirements. So a brief overview of the parliamentarian procedure is that when used and remembered, it really does help meetings run more smoothly to help assist business take place fully and transparently. Why do we use parliamentarian procedure? Well, one, it's required by our bylaws to facilitate the transaction of business, to promote cooperation and harmony, to ensure that all members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations, and to ensure the majority has the right to decide, but the minority has rights which must be protected as well. So the main role of the chair is really to call the meeting to order, maintain that order and decorum, ensure adherence to the agenda, and adjourn the meeting. This is a Robert's Rules of Order structure. So decorum in meetings really is to be polite to one another, to use the term chair, to speak only when recognized, debate guidelines focusing on the subject, not the person who brought it up, and respectful language. So making motions, there's a simple outline. You obtain the floor, you state the motion clearly, it requires a second, and then it becomes open for debate. The committee may only consider one primary question at a time, and no other business can be considered until that primary motion has been disposed of. So there are ways to amend a motion, and you can strike out wording, insert wording, or both. It must be germane to the original motion. I've been using a line item about $500 budgeted for hot chocolate. And if someone was to amend that motion and say, you know, I really need to make an amendment to this, I really want to spend this allocated money if we do have it on the planting of oak trees. So then you can kind of see that that's not germane and related to hot chocolate. So that needs to be a failed motion and a new motion made for that. But you can amend a motion by striking out a word, a sentence, or a paragraph. And again, inserting a word, a sentence, or a paragraph, or both. You can edit that, but that's really only a way you could amend a motion. Common mistakes, there's two that often happen is when someone says a really great motion or the staff really deliberates and outlines a report and someone says, so moved. You know, we ask if, we'll certainly take it, but we ask if you can restate that motion clearly, because you'll find when you say it out loud, you may want to edit it a little bit, add more clarity. And then you may, the staff member may have forgotten to put which fund it needs to be taken out of or the exact amount. So we ask that we restate it. Also using the terminology old business versus unfinished business. But that's basically it. Order of business as outlined is the typical structure for meeting agendas, and this follows the Robert's Rules of Order structure. It's a meeting called to order, approval of minutes, the member forum, and then other reports and business, and then final adjournment. So to ensure that we publish committee agendas, we are adhering to agenda item requirements. We're in compliance with RWC policies, legal standards, and to maintain transparency. So really, why is this item in this packet, right? Because a lot of individuals will find that during a meeting, another item comes up for consideration, right? So maybe someone during the members forum, and you start trying to discuss it, right? But the public wasn't made aware of that agenda line item, and this committee wasn't fully prepared and staff weren't prepared to discuss it. So we can definitely add it to a next agenda, but we want to make sure that we are providing transparency for the Corporations Code, Brown Act, Robert's Rules of Order, and our bylaws. So RWC policies, 201.1 is advance notice of meetings. That really is that mandate that we publish the proposed agenda in advance to the public. Make sure all of these items are consistently and informed for stakeholders and the committee members. Policy 201.4 is that open committee meeting policy, which requires that members forum to allow public comment. And the Corporations Code that we kind of align ourselves with is that public notice of meetings as well, given the opportunity for members interested in the line items to attend and participate. The Brown Act also mandates that local legislative bodies in California conduct meetings openly, provide advance notice of meetings and its agendas. So we provide all of that with our current system. And then according to Robert's Rules of Order, only items listed on the agenda can be discussed during the meeting. This ensures that meetings are orderly, focused, and that all members have the opportunity to prepare for those topics to be addressed. Our bylaws require the agenda items to be publicly listed and to maintain transparency. So as handling business not on the agenda, strict agenda adherence, items not on the agenda cannot be discussed. You can certainly add it to the following agenda. If there's no items for discussion on the next meeting, nothing comes up during the drafting of the agenda, you can cancel the meeting or hold the meeting to discuss future items to be placed. But those are the only two items to be discussed. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
If an item comes up that's not on the agenda, so it cannot be discussed, what is the correct procedure to have it put on a future agenda?
Simply say, secretary or group, do you all agree to have it placed on the next meeting agenda? And then the staff liaison who's typically in attendance, you know, what is their schedule? Can they gather that information in a timely manner? Just kind of a unified, let's try to get this on the next meeting agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
An example of that's the next item. It came up at the last meeting but had to be moved to this one because it wasn't on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. Okay,
That concludes my
Thank you.
presentation.
and now we can have Ann Peterson share with us the agenda item that wasn't discussed at the last meeting.
Sounds good. So we're looking at policy 601. What happened in the last policy meeting was there was a discussion and an eventual vote by the board to change residence forum to members forum regarding when residents come up and talk to the meetings as part of the open public comment. At the time, one of the policy committee members brought up the fact that there could be confusion if we allowed residents forum to stay in the newspaper. It is in policy 601 that it is residents and not members. So residents would then include tenants, caregivers, anyone who's a designated occupant. Actually, they're classified as a member anyway, but your co-occupants then fall under that more broader scope of residents. So the member of the policy committee last time was concerned that if we had members forum only at meetings and then residents forum in the paper, there would be some confusion in the community about who could speak and who could write. And so he had suggested that for continuity's sake, for consistency, we also allow the newspaper to be members only, which would require a policy change. As has been noted, legally, we did have to make it members forum for the meetings. That's the law. We do not have to do the same with the newspaper. That is a decision that can be made by policy and the full board. As Mary noted in residence forum, however, our trust is very implicit that our amenities are for members. And so again, that was one of the reasons that the thought was brought up to change this from residents to members. If we make the change, it would just basically change it throughout, but it would specify in policy 6012-6, letter C, that letters are accepted from, that would become RWC members instead of GRF, since we also now have name change. But it would be just the RWC members instead of residents. So that's what's being considered today.
Question. So are we assuming that members includes designated occupants?
It does,
Okay.
according to our bylaws, designated occupants are members.
How about people who are renting?
No, renters would not, unless the owner gave up the designated occupant status to them. And in most cases, that doesn't happen, but occasionally it does.
Do you have any feeling or knowledge about how many letters the newspaper receives from people who are not members?
So I went back, because I knew this question was coming up, I went back and audited the past 6 months. We've had 2 letters, one from a renter and one from a caregiver. The rest all came from members. So it would have a very
And
margin.
that's 2 out of approximately how many letters?
I think there were about 380 around that.
Okay.
Another question. I found the word resident in 4 other occurrences. Do you want those occurrences?
Yes, we would be taking out resident and putting members
Or I'll
throughout.
just write you separately for that.
We need to update this policy anyways for the
Yes.
RWC.
We'll do all the housekeeping at once.
I can drop something.
Okay,
I don't have a question,
Yes.
I have a comment.
go for it.
That I understand the concern about consistency, but and I understand the action we took in terms of requiring members for comments to the board and to committees. And I also understand that our resources are used to support the newspaper. Yet I still think, I'm not concerned about consistency, and even though your good question, Mary, showed us there weren't a lot of non-members submitting letters, I still think it would be beneficial to have the broader interpretation of residents for the newspaper.
Yes, Ted.
I have a couple people living in my court who are, for whatever reasons, cannot support themselves, so they decide to move in with mother or grandmother, and who are very opinionated. But I don't think that I would want to hear their opinion about anything that is happening in Rossmore to Rossmore. I don't think that they should have the right to put something in the paper, whether it be factual or not, into the paper to sway other people's reasoning when they have no vested interest in Rossmore at all, other than the fact that they are just kind of people who just hate everything. And so to that point, I would like to keep it just to the members of Rossmore who are concerned about what is happening in Rossmore. and keep it on those lines. And that's just my opinion on anybody from the outside being able to tell us or influence us on what to do.
Okay, I have a comment there following on what Ken is saying here. If a tenant is not a designated resident, okay, there must be a reason based on how the owner of that property is behaving. So technically, unless we keep it and make it members only, that particular entity could have two votes, one for the rentor and one for the person who owns the property, is right? No?
No. So you have to be either the owner or the designated occupant to have the right to vote. If you are just a tenant, you do not vote in the election, so.
No, but you would have the right to comment in the.
You have the right to comment,
So
yes,
that
but not the right to
particular
vote.
unit, not to vote, but that particular unit would have more voice than one where we just limit it to members. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I'm definitely saying that we need to choose, because deciding who can write to the newspaper is to me important. And if we go beyond members, we don't know who the other people are and to accept opinions of people who could be visiting here. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So the owners and designated occupants are stakeholders in the community. And to me, and according to the trust, they have that right to speak. And I don't feel like renters have that stakeholder perspective. I don't feel like their right to speak is extended to them since they don't have a real, they're not a stakeholder. So.
And I have one more question. You've talked about this before, but to me, it's very relevant here. What is the stated purpose of the Rossmore News?
Oh, it's for the residents. And we have said before residents, we've not used the word member. But when you get right down to it, when you look at what we're putting into the newspaper, right? It is the clubs and organizations. It's the RWC news. It's the mutual news. It really does all go back to those primary stakeholders. It doesn't mean that renters who live here are not a part of that, because they very much are. But oftentimes when it comes down to the actual voting matters in mutuals and with RWC, you are talking about the members. So when we're putting a lot of these things in the paper, it is about helping owners to understand the value of their property, the values of the amenities, the value of the community trust overall. So. But again, I do want to emphasize, the one other thing that I will emphasize, just so that there's an understanding here. There are some clubs who will, they don't necessarily, it's not just about members. Residents can be along there as well as renters, et cetera. They can be sort of the PR contact, if you will, the folks who are submitting articles. So we do still broadly allow, as long as it's a resident. No one who is not a resident can submit a letter, a column, an article. You have to be a resident or staff member to submit to the newspaper. So we do have sort of strict, but when it comes to who's allowed and who's not, we're strictly talking about the letters. We are not talking about the other content. That would still stay open to all the residents unless, again, the committee wants to relook at that.
Will the title be changed to member forum?
It would be changing the title to member forum, correct? That's what this would do.
But if a renter or a caregiver had an opinion that they wanted expressed, they could actually appeal to a owner or designated occupant to make that opinion known.
That is correct.
So they, in a way, they have a voice because they're affiliated with a member or a designated occupant.
In a letter from, excuse me, you go
No,
ahead.
no, you go ahead.
In a letter from a owner or a member or designated owner, member, would they, if they were speaking on behalf of their tenant or speaking on behalf of their caregiver, should that be identified in the letter to the member?
That's entirely up to them.
Okay.
If they felt strongly about it on their own, they wouldn't necessarily have to stipulate that they were speaking on behalf of someone else.
Susan?
I was just gonna bring up what came into my head. So every unit, every manor here has an owner.
Correct.
So if the manor or the unit is occupied by a renter, you're still gonna deliver the paper to the unit because it's owned by someone? Would you ever get to the point where you would consider delivering the paper to owners only who are residing in their unit and not renters who are residing in a unit?
We have, that I know of, 4 or 5 owners who do not live on site, who prior to this past year and a half, they were getting a newspaper mailed to them. We stopped that. We explained to them that the delivery is inside the gate only. If they want the printed newspaper outside the gate, they have to pay for that. Even though they're an owner, they would have to buy a subscription. The paper goes with the manor, not with the member. The e-edition's
okay.
available online, and that's
Okay.
inevitably what the owners ended up deciding to do outside the gate. But essentially what you're doing is you're stipulating, because our delivery is door to door
Okay.
inside Rossmore, it's going to their manor. Now, technically, an owner could call us and could stop the paper, and the tenant would then not get the paper.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Are we gonna, just one, are we gonna do the housekeeping stuff on all of that?
Yes.
Okay,
The RWC.
the RWC,
I will
everyone,
take care of-
okay, great.
Absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion. All right, I move that the policy committee recommend to the RWC board, no slip there, to approve the changes listed in policy 601.2 to change resident forum to members forum.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion or questions? Can we have a vote?
Absolutely. Hurt,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Hamaji,
Yes?
and Hildred.
No.
It carries. All right.
Meeting.
Well, the next meeting will be Monday, July 14 at 1:30 in the afternoon.
All right. And that's the
There's no
meeting
other
adjourned.
business? I'm sorry?
Sorry. Go ahead.
If there's no other comments or business, then the meeting is adjourned, and we did this in 35 minutes.
You are a record breaker.
Okay.
It is.